Okay, it's 12:03. We'll call our discussion on growth policy with Interstate Engineering to order. I will turn this over to John and Interstate, and we'll kind of proceed through.
Can you hear us, Rachel?
I can, yes.
Awesome. So I'm here with the commissioners, Casey Burke, the planner. So this is Rachel Walkway. She is our lead planner out of Williston, and then she's also the contract planner for Richland County as well. So I guess Roosevelt County is due for a growth policy update. They don't have a lot to update, but the one thing they want to touch base on is the renewable energy, wind farms, solar farms, things like that. And I guess I'll kind of let Casey explain what he's thinking and the best way to go about that. And then we're going to look at your input and see if it's something that the county can do on their own as far as an update, or if we should apply for funding and do a growth policy update, or how, I guess, the best way to handle it. So Casey, I'll let you kind of explain.
Sure. Well, after just discussions with the commissioners here and some worries about renewable energies, we just talked about how we could maybe get some regulations. And we think the first way to do that is mention it in our growth policy, which is due for an update anyway. I know there's a lot more that comes after that, but we just wanted to talk to someone who sounds like you guys have gone through it already. So just seeing how people have already done these things. I'm talking to, we're looking at doing the same thing in Valley County too. So I'm going to be dealing with this a lot going forward, but we're just kind of at the discussion point of how we should proceed forward. You hear me? Yep. That's about all I got.
So, do you want me to jump in now?
Yes, please. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I think growth policy updates are really important. I think if you guys are at the point of needing a full update, which you're at past 5 years, right?
Right, but I don't think the county's
Would
looking
you
for
want
the county just did a full update 5
update?
years ago. Yeah, this would be more of a
Right.
if I'm reading the room right, more of a targeted update.
We want to do a $10,000 update,
Okay.
not a $50,000 update.
That'd be the way to put it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Would you want to do public engagement to determine kind of the level of regulation that you're looking for, or do you kind of feel like you have a pretty good understanding of what your public opinion is?
But you pretty much have
I think we have to have public
engagement.
input.
Okay. So if we do public engagement and then we look specifically at the renewables, I in all honesty, I hesitate to limit updates on energy policy to renewables only, simply because well, one, I don't know that the phrase is always like the best for the type of energy uses that we see in the region. And I think you'd want something broader that would allow you really to regulate like large scale industrial uses. Because so what we're seeing as a trend, right, is this like need from most counties, and I obviously haven't talked to anybody in your region on energy consumption, but for the most part, energy usage is going up. And so it's not just like renewables that most counties in eastern Montana, I think, need to be concerned about. There's also like battery storage systems, data centers, like a variety of these uses that are using the energy that's being produced. And that's really how I would probably recommend looking at it, is more on like your large scale, more industrial uses, and energy development is part of that, but also those other uses are too. But I do think like if that sounds okay to you, that to me would be a comprehensive way of looking at the issue while addressing like the overall concern, right? Because your concern is probably the impact that those uses are having on like neighbors, if I'm guessing correctly.
Yeah, or possible impacts on
I
neighbors.
can't see
Yeah,
any reviews, so I can't tell.
or
Yeah. Okay.
lagging.
That would be my recommendation, is to really look at it from like a regulation of uses, but
But does that take a full blown? Look at it, or can we do segmented?
yeah, what we would probably do is, knowing that that's where your interest lies and that you want the ability to have policy on those types of uses, we would probably take a look at like your demographics. We'd update those. We would probably take a look at like the wind and solar capacity that exists in the area, any planned like data centers, solar farms, other various energy related and industrial use activities, and then probably do a little bit of community input, and then really focus on giving you a section of the growth policy that would give you backup for regulation. I don't know if 10,000 is like, it's probably more of like 20, if I'm being honest, with having to go back and like make sure we're having conversations with those energy producers. Because really, I guess I don't want to tell you how to think about it, but I want to tell you that I think your local energy producer is going to have a strong opinion on what type of energy is being produced and how much and what kind of capacity they're looking at and need. And honestly, probably won't change our general recommendations and regulation, but it certainly will probably change and affect the language that we use within the growth policy. Does that make sense?
So I mean, our capacity for energy is pretty high. I mean, if we have a fertilizer plant maybe coming in, we got oil, which is really taken off on our east end of Roosevelt County. We have about 3 guys in the Freud area that already have wind leases that they're supposed to take to their lawyers and look at, or they are filed in the courthouse already. We haven't had much solar, but that fertilizer plant did say they wanted a 1,000-acre solar farm. So I mean, there's talk of it all in the east end. So our capacity is pretty high for all energy, all the above energy needs or demands.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it sounds like you have both demand and capacity coming in. So we want to measure that and make sure we kind of understand what the trend is.
Rachel, can you explain a little bit that correlation between the growth policy update and putting in, what did we call it? Not as,
Ordinances or
yeah,
conditions.
yeah, like a
Conditions of approval.
conditional zoning, I guess. Where that line between, because you obviously you can't limit or restrict anything in the growth policy.
Correct. Yeah. Your growth policy is not going to be regulatory. What it does is it gives you the backup and the reasoning for doing your zoning regulations. So I guess, Casey, I'd be interested to know if you have a different thought on this, but my general thought is that there's probably not really a good way for you to put regulations or restrictions or conditions of approval on any type of use without zoning being in place. You don't have zoning at the moment, correct?
We're trying to avoid the zoning word.
Oh, we're a little unique in Roosevelt County. We can't zone on the reservation, but we can zone off the
Right.
reservation. We're 40%
Right.
off, 60% on. So we're just really putting
Yeah.
on zone regulations off the reservation, not on. But then can we, on fee land, can we put zoning on the reservation? Is that even legal? Or is it
I don't think you could.
doable?
You'd have to stay. I think you'd have to stay off, but I don't know of a way. And the Richland County commissioners and I had quite a number of conversations about this. I don't know of a way that you would be able to put conditions of approval on any use or any development that's not going through subdivision without a zoning code, because that use isn't going to come in front of you.
But if somebody has a fee land they're putting on the, we still go, you still do a subdivision on that, right? Like the,
She's saying we wouldn't be able to enforce any regulations if they weren't going through a subdivision. If they were just putting this, if they're keeping this tract of record and they're putting their project on that. I mean, we wouldn't be involved with it.
right,
Anyway, we're talking about
Right.
some project-based regulations. I think before,
and there again, are you talking about the fee land in off reservation or just off?
we don't have any jurors. We can't do
Do
anything.
anything ever, or even fee land on reservation,
What's that?
even fee land on reservation, we can't restrict.
If they're not doing a subdivision, we don't really have anything to say. That's what we're trying to figure out.
So when the dollar store comes in, we can do it because they have to go through subdivision regulation. That's on field.
Yep.
But if they're putting a wind farm in on their own, on somebody's pasture, they're not going through subdivision regulations, so we have no control of it. Off reservations, we do.
Right.
But would
No.
these, would the,
Well, actually off reservations, even if they're not doing a subdivision.
If they're not doing a subdivision, no, off.
Well, how are these people regulated?
Even if they're
How are they doing offsets of wind
Sorry.
farms? They're a half mile from a building structure. How do they do that? That's an ordinance, isn't it?
that's through subdivision, or it's through zoning ordinance. So your
Yeah.
subdivision ordinance, you can't regulate that type of restriction through your subdivision ordinance either. So it has to be zoning.
Has to be zoned. Okay.
Has
So
to be
yeah, I
zoning.
know that.
Yep.
This, like I say, the growth policy is just a live document that kind of gives us guidance. I know it's not regulatory whatsoever, but it gives you a little more, something to go on.
so do I gather correctly, just from what I've heard thus far? The only way to get setbacks for wind, solar is to use the zoning word.
Mhm.
So as much as none of us probably like that word, that's gonna be the decision that has to be made before. I mean, there's no sense going through this growth policy or anything unless,
Well, there is, growth policy is totally separate.
Do you,
but if we're not comfortable using the zoning word, there's no way to get any setbacks for anything.
Well, no, but you still want the growth policy up to date and have all these ideas in there. So,
Well, the growth policy would have to be
so
updated.
if I
no
can,
matter-
if I can
Yeah.
jump in,
even if it's-
if I can jump
even
in
if
here.
it's
So,
material.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
okay, so I think there's kind of two separate issues here, right? One is that having an updated growth policy assists you with grants and a wide variety of other things, right? So whether we update it because you're looking at zoning or not, the updated growth policy still has value in and of itself, right? You're still taking a look at what the
Right.
county wants. We're doing general public involvement. When it comes to the zoning piece, I agree with you. I think it's a scary word for Eastern Montana. It doesn't have to be super scary. I don't know if John has showed you the part of the Richland County growth policy that we put together. We talked pretty heavily. We did a decent amount of public engagement on countywide zoning when we were doing that project recently. And that's the place that like we've done the most work on zoning for the county. And we had a pretty overwhelming response that county residents did actually want to see zoning in the county. But we talked a lot about kind of where those parameters would lay, right? Like it wasn't zoning as far as, okay, you can have a house and your front yard setbacks are 20 feet and your rear yard setbacks are 75 feet and you can have a fence in the front yard as long as it's not more than 4 feet tall. Like not any of that, right? We were talking about regulating like large scale uses, right? More than anything else. So that might help you to look at that to see kind of that it's not all black and all white, right? There's kind of a gray middle ground on zoning because we have the freedom to kind of write it how it needs to be written. Or you do, whoever you choose to do with that can do it. And the growth policy would simply provide that guidance.
Yeah, so I would like to see, we don't want
yeah.
blanket zoning, we want.
Right.
Targeted zoning.
Well,
And
you
that'd
have
be
to
part of the growth policy,
zone
say
the
that's-
entire,
But it would kind of.
yeah, you don't have to zone the entire county, but most of those properties can be in a zoning district that allows like pretty much whatever, if that's how you want to go with it.
But in order to implement that, you would want something in the growth policy.
Guiding
I think you would
Yeah, I-
need something in the growth policy.
I see this is growing as we're talking.
Me too. So I've been looking to it more and more, and the more I'm hearing, the more I see it growing too.
Yeah, it's a full blown thing. Which is probably needed in there. Times are changing.
So Rachel, the other aspect of this is, so I believe CDBG is about the only one that applies, well, CDBG and MSEP are the only ones that will fund a growth policy. The county is applying for CDBG funds remote or immediately here for the Brockton PER. So they are really limited on what they can apply, obviously, for two grants at the same time. You have an MSEP, I believe, isn't open until 27 in the fall of 27. So that's kind of I guess the other sticking point is trying to do both of these items at the same time. And do you have any advice on that from the funding aspect?
No, not really. I mean, my one thought is if you, I don't really know. I don't know Commerce well enough to know what their thoughts would be if you were to bring forward like a really limited application for a growth policy simply to deal with energy uses. I wonder if it wouldn't be worth. I'm pretty sure you could apply for planning funds for a zoning code. We've done that before. So you could choose to do the growth policy update and pay for it and then utilize funds for the zoning piece of it if you wanted. That might be an option to at least like save you money and get you started. But I don't it's gonna be a bit of a wait there. And I don't know that it's it for like a limited update, right? If we're not doing like a $50,000 project, I don't know how worth it is to apply for a small amount. But that's I don't know your finances as a county.
We're right behind Richland. That tells you anything. So we do all right with the ones. We can more than fund the growth policy. And then if we can get CDBG for the zoning, which is gonna take I think a good chunk of time. That'd be the next phase. I don't know if that'll be this year or next year. What would the cost for engineer stuff for zoning for the next phase? If we do the $30,000 growth policy on our own, and what would it cost to
Glad you gave me an
do
extra 10.
what would a zoning cost to get all that process done? I mean, an estimate.
Yeah, it
range.
probably would. Yeah, it would probably depend a little on scope, right? Like if all you want us to do is write it at 30 to 40, if you want us to shepherd it through that public hearing process, like I don't know that I could begin to guess because it would probably depend on how contentious the meetings get, right? How many you have to have, how many times you go back. So like that would be kind of the tipping point there, I think. How much public engagement do you want as part of the zoning code?
We did the workforce stuff and that wasn't too bad, but maybe. I think everyone was on board with that. That was far more simple,
Yeah.
far less
Contagious.
Yeah.
Because I mean, would that work if we could get a CBG next year for that or
So that we should be able to have the PER completed by this time next year. And have that all adopted so then we could get rid of that grant. I believe they usually come out in, and then obviously it's all contingent on funding. I believe they come out in the May of every year. You know offhand, Rachel, I think it's May of every year, when CDBG planning grants come out. So that could put us in line to apply for CDBG planning for the zoning in May of 27. And I wouldn't want to run all this by
I can't remember if, yeah, I can't remember if zoning codes would fall under MSEP too, which wouldn't be till 2027 either, but you would definitely, I mean, you'd want to have the growth policy done first either way. So like we could do the growth policy update, make a determination based on the public input that came out of the growth policy, kind of where we think that public input level should be, whether we think it's like you need to have a meeting in every like town hall in the county, or whether you can have 2 county commission meetings and people can show up if they have questions, right? And we'll probably have a better idea post public input during the growth policy, because we can, knowing that that's what you're kind of leading into, we can target those questions and those conversations a little bit and get a better idea of what it looks like. Like I'll tell you that if like Richland County were to do zoning right now, I would honestly not anticipate it to be anywhere near as controversial as like the Prairie County, Dawson County meetings.
I don't. But yeah, I have never really heard any, I mean, people they wanted, private rights, you can put wind farms on, you can put solar panels up, but I think everybody kind of agrees there should be some offsets. So I don't think it's, but we'll find out, I guess, when you start talking about it.
But I think I think it's how you sell it. Right. I mean, nobody wants.
There's a lot of education involved.
But I think it all comes down to, yes, we want everybody to have their own private rights. Every landowner has rights. But I think it boils down to how you sell it to the public and sell it in a way that, if your neighbor puts one in your backyard, you're not going to be real happy about it. So don't put one in your neighbor's backyard. That's what we're trying to prevent. And if it can be sold correctly, I think everybody will be on board. And I don't think we're gonna get the Dawson and Prairie County. I don't think we're there yet. And I think if we do it now, we will be ahead of the game. But if we wait too long, then I think that's when we're gonna come into that argument. My opinion. And I don't know.
I think you're dead on.
And I don't know. I get that we have a lot of reservation land, but we can't, if we put that zoning in, whether it encompasses the reservation or not, we can't say, well, this is for off reservation and it doesn't qualify for on reservation, but it does for off. Because then we're gonna end up with a big debate and a big issue there. It's Roosevelt County as a whole. And if it's not binding on the reservation, then so be it. But I think we have to do the county as a whole. I don't think we can split it, although we're partially reservation and partially not. But that's my opinion. We make it for the reservation, and if it works under the tribal side of things, then that's great. If it doesn't, then you know what? Hey, it's county whole, and you're included on the reservation.
I agree. I think you have to do it as the county as a whole, whether it's enforced on the reservation is
right.
Basically the tribe.
Enforced or enforceable.
Correct. Yep.
It's on feline, I would think it would be enforced.
I would think so too would be done, but
Feline would have.
But you say it has to go through a subdivision rules for us to be able to do it, so you don't do that for a windmill, that would just strictly be ordinances. I don't think
But would you subdivide that for tax benefits? I mean, if there are, would you want to subdivide your farmland out so you're in a different tax or no?
it's basically $10,000 to $20,000 a site for a wind farm.
But there's not any tax benefits that if you had it subdivided out. That's where my mind went, but maybe
I'm not very good at accounting. The only thing I could think of is maybe liability or something is why
If
you
you
want
put
to
it in
sell.
corporation.
Yeah.
Well, unless you want the option to sell the, like a building site
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that. Rachel, I guess from your
I don't
standpoint-
know how often you. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's kind of a little bit off the subject, but from a timeline standpoint, is say from now to March, April 2027, enough time to get a growth policy updated in order to apply for zoning, the grant for zoning in May of 27?
Mhm. Yeah, I think just based on like our team's current workload, I think we'd be looking at starting this fall probably on the growth policy update if you moved forward with it. But I don't think it's a huge. Again, I think it'll depend on like the scoping of the public involvement, and we can certainly talk to Casey and get a good idea of like what we think would make sense in the county and where to kind of make sure we're visiting. But I think yeah, I feel like it shouldn't take very long. I mean, a lot of it's pulling demographics in those public input sessions. I feel like we could get it done this fall and be ready to go for May.
You guys did the last growth policy?
Yes, we did.
Mhm.
Somebody else did it before that.
Yes.
Who was it? They're always at our meetings.
all my time.
Was it Great West?
Great West,
Did-
Great West, and they did a terrible job. But that was 15 years ago.
Right.
Well, this would obviously sign a bunch of task order, but would this all follow underneath that master agreement with Interstate then?
Yeah, so our master service agreement does have planning services involved as well, planning, funding, administration, engineering, everything. So yes, it could.
Casey, what do you think? We move forward with, we'll pay for the planning grant as just the county out of county funds. Get it done this fall, so next spring we can do a zoning, and then next summer we'll do zoning. How does that line up with Valley?
Well, I'm having a planning board meeting there tonight. We'll find out. I'm kind of doing this all at the same time.
Who's their engineer firm?
Great West did their last growth policy, and then we're looking at it's like the same thing.
So
We're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, they're not stuck with Great West either. But we've talked to them already about doing a small update like that. But I think
We both have essays with them.
tonight I just need to talk to them and say, look, there's gonna be more to this than. We've just been chatting about it. Once you actually get into the reality of things, there's a lot more.
Yeah, because for this, I mean, to get the good scope, you're gonna have to have probably 3 public meetings, culverts and.
For sure.
Point. For sure.
Yeah.
That takes time.
And this is in fact a 1-2 type of deal, right? I'm reading it right, the growth policy and then zoning.
Yeah, you need to kind of. Yeah, say we're going to do this.
Yeah.
This is our objective. This is what we want. Something we need to look into, and that gives you the
Growth
opening
policy
to.
has to have the guidance.
To do that.
Because
To set it.
that'll help with your funding and
Right.
legality and
So if you
everything
go
else.
for zoning and they'll look at your growth policy, they're gonna have zoning in your growth policy.
Yeah,
They're gonna give you-
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you just gotta mention you're gonna look at it or study it or.
Yeah.
However, John words it, with using AI.
Well, I'm not a fan.
We
of
would
AI.
never.
Rachel
We
is
would
the one
never.
that knows how to word things correctly. She's the planner. I'm not.
So you. have-
I
you
don't,
have-
I love AI for certain things, like telling me a meal plan for the week. I don't love it for my professional duties.
So you do have the capacity to do that this fall if we do a task order.
Yeah, we could do it this fall.
Well,
I think that's the way to proceed myself.
I'm in agreement there.
We'll just put it in the budget for this July to pay for the growth policy at 30,000 and. So you did that.
We started at 10, John, still chiseling on you from last
And
day.
then we'll get, have John write a CBG grant for zoning and planning, or zoning and ordinances.
In the 27 cycle.
27 cycle. That's how I see it.
I didn't quite understand, but now it's a lot clearer to me that it's gotta be this done before that, and I didn't know, I wasn't aware of that before, so it makes sense to me.
I mean, we did this growth policy for the city and county. I've been through 3 of them with them, 2 with county now. And you get it, you put it on the shelf, never look at it again, but.
But it in the other hand, when you apply for the other funding,
That's what
they're gonna say,
That's what they
well,
look at,
Yeah.
what is in your growth policy?
yeah. So it's not,
Rachel, do you have anything in
I
your
really
subdivision
hope-
regulations about that, about renewables then?
I'm sorry, in what?
Do you have anything in your subdivision regulations about those kind of projects?
Mm.
Renewable energy projects,
No,
anything
'cause-
like?
They're so limited, like our subdivision regulations in general in Montana are so limited by the state. Like I don't think it'd be really, really, really difficult to regulate a use through the subdivision code. Like if the state
Okay.
code doesn't contemplate that, I would say you
Sure.
probably get challenged on that one.
We were just we got the new Mako model updates and we're probably gonna probably
Hmm.
adopt those coming up. I just didn't know if there's anything else we should,
Okay.
as far as that goes.
Oof.
it's hard to add, you take something away, but it's not.
Yeah, you can't really, it can't be more stringent, yeah.
Right. I don't, personal opinion, I don't love the Mako model code. I feel like it's hard to follow and hard to read. But it is there for a reason. I don't think there's anything in there that I would say like you could add to. I just don't see there's just not a way to regulate use within the subdivision.
I was just kind of curious. If there was
Yeah.
anything, I didn't figure there was, but.
Yeah. Sorry. And sorry to give my personal opinion on regulations.
Oh,
I
no,
find
no.
them personally really difficult to follow. But
Yeah, I'm making president.
well, Karen is great and she's providing really good guidance. I think sometimes the Mako regulations can be a little bit more geared towards Western Montana than Eastern Montana, where we kind of want things to be very straightforward.
All
And
those
it's just personal
regulations,
preference.
it's so cumbersome.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But I would, okay, sorry, I have to go back. It's like a professional obligation. I have to go back to the point where we said that growth policies sit on shelves. They shouldn't be sitting on your shelf. If you have,
It is.
they
It's a
just
live
shouldn't be.
document
It
sitting
hurts.
up there.
It hurts to hear it. I always talk to people too and tell them that, like your growth policy, it doesn't need to be used as a checklist for like, here are the things that we're going to do. But it can be a really good support for if someone comes into you and says, hey, can you support this? I want to do this project, or hey, I have a group of people who want to do this project. It can help provide you guidance there and backup for those things. So that's my planning soapbox of the day.
There you go. We're not paying you $50,000 for nothing.
See,
I'm
You're getting better. Just keep talking.
I thought it was up over there somewhere.
It's in there somewhere, I think.
Yeah, it was put up there 5 years ago.
Probably in the closet. Backfill board.
Yeah, no, it's,
Around here somewhere.
I'm all in favor of getting it updated.
Yeah.
Well, I will prepare a task order, to update that. I'll probably get with you later, Rachel, and, narrow down the scope and whatnot and we can kind of move from there. Like I said, it'll be something that might probably get some preliminary stuff done here during the summer, but,
Sure.
we won't do any.
Casey will.
I'll help them. Okay, I'll do what I can.
Sure.
Oh, I think that's, put a task order together, we'll put it in the next meeting and, we can vote on proceeding forward with that task order then, and we'll can kind of get into that explanation of it a little bit more. Sure. On the growth policy side of things, I think it's something that's gotta be done and sounds like it's a 1-2 punch kind of a thing, so. Any other discussion that we need to have at this point in time?
I appreciate your input, Rachel.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you for joining
Thank
us
you.
and, if there's nothing further, we'll, adjourn the meeting. We have a motion?
Motion adjourned.
There.
Motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you guys.
So on our planning board,